All right, welcome back to the Stateside Podcast. I am your host, James Macmillan, alongside with our trusted new co-host, Alan Ashcraft.
Hello.
Today we have a very esteemed guest, Finn McKenty from the Punk Rock MBA YouTube channel, and much, much more, and we'll get to know him as we go along. But welcome to the show, Finn.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it, man, especially the day before Thanksgiving.
The work never stops, right?
Nope.
No holidays.
Not in
I
this
don't want them. I don't like holidays. I don't like time off. I get antsy. Whenever it's the holiday season, this is the most aggravating time of year for me because like people don't work as much and I get really antsy if I'm not working.
Yeah, I hear you.
Especially the music industry from like basically today until maybe January 15th. It's going to be crickets everywhere.
Why is that with a bunch of fucking band people who all claim they're all cynical people who don't like Christmas? Why is it that those people out of all the demographics take all the time off in the world?
Because they're lazy.
That's it. And this is why I asked Finn to be on the show. Dude, I gotta say, I love your candor and the way that you're correlating entrepreneurship with music, and not just being in a band, but being in the music industry as a whole. I love that whole thing. And that's kind of like what got me going down the rabbit hole with all of your content. So I would like to talk about that a bit, and kind of where that came from, and maybe give a quick bio to the audience listening, where you come from and what your history is in music and as a dude.
I grew up in a little town. Well, I was actually born in Bellingham, Washington, which is kind of halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, kind of up near the Canadian border. But I grew up in Snohomish, Washington, which is a suburb maybe about 20 miles north of Seattle. Back in the 90s is kind of, when I was a young man. Now I'm an old man, but I was a young man back in the 90s. And basically I just got really hooked on punk and hardcore back then, like DIY hardcore. I discovered through, if any of you guys listening to this come from a similar background, I discovered Maximum Rock and Roll in like 92 or something like that. And that just kind of opened up the door to the whole world of like DIY punk and hardcore to me. And it just became my life for a very long time. So I started out making zines. I think when I was like 14 or 15, I started making zines, and I did that like in high school. I was never really in a serious band or anything like that. I've always enjoyed kind of documenting things more than, playing music. I can play music and record music, but I just kind of enjoy documenting stuff more. So I made zines, and I ended up, to your point about entrepreneurship, I started that thing when I was like 14. I'm not one of those people that is content to just make something for myself and nobody else ever sees it. Like, to me, it's only, I only think it's valuable if other people care about it. And so to me, like, the creation and the marketing have always been, part of the same thing since back then. So I made the zine and I was like, oh, wait a minute, how am I going to get anybody to like read this thing? Nobody knows I exist. So that's kind of when I got into that whole thing of like marketing. So I ended up selling a few thousand copies of those, maybe 2,000 copies or something like that by the time I was out of high school. And I graduated in 96. So this was before the internet as we know it. And when I think about it, I was like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, man, if you told me I had to sell 2,000 copies of a magazine now through the mail without the internet, like, I don't know if I could do it. But I did it when I was a kid, And so to your point about entrepreneurship, I guess that's kind of when I got the bug of, wanting to make shit and sell it. So yeah, that's kind of where I got started. And then from there, I ended up kind of being in the design and marketing world for for my whole career. I worked at a design agency I worked at a couple agencies, did stuff for like Nike and Nintendo and Red Bull, and then some big consumer brands like, I worked with Procter and Gamble a whole bunch. So on like Febreze and Swiffer and Tide and Balance, all that kind of stuff. Did marketing for Abercrombie and Fitch, design and marketing. So I designed like girls' t-shirts for Hollister for a while, made a few hundred of those. Then I did marketing when they were kind of really aggressively building out Asia and Europe. So helped, with rolling out the marketing for all those flagship stores that opened in that time. So I worked there like 2009 to 2012.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I worked at a company called Creative Live, which is the world's #1 online education platform for creators and entrepreneurs. I have that pitch.
Yeah,
down.
buddy.
Yeah. And now I work for a company called Mckenty, which is an online education platform for rock and metal producers. And I'm also a partner in Get Good Drums, which is a software company with the guys from a band called Periphery that some of your listeners may know about.
Indeed. Well, you're a fan of the band.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually, on the way to the studio today, I'd seen a lot of your YouTube videos, but I wanted to kind of keep doing my research. So, we didn't get on this and then just my dick is in my hand and you're, having a bad time. So I was like, let's learn about this guy a little bit. And so I was like, I wonder if he has an actual podcast. I'm aware of the YouTube thing, but so I just, I searched punk rock MBA in my Apple podcast app, and this thing pops up. It just says chocolate croissant. And I'm like,
that's right.
Does he have something to do with like a baking app? Like, is he also like a baller baker on top of everything else he does? And then I saw Matt Halpern in there, and I was like, oh, okay, it's starting to make more sense. So I listened to that, and that was awesome. I honestly wasn't even aware of that podcast, but yeah, I'm a huge Periphery fan.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did have a podcast for many years. I have a couple different ones. Did maybe 100 episodes or something like that between the two of them. And I'm going to start Punk Rock MBA podcast very soon, but not yet.
Oh, nice. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, just it's just a matter of finding the time. You guys know how time consuming it is to like set this up and edit it and publish it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
People. I don't think people understand how much work it is to produce an hour and a half of audio every week.
Yep.
Yeah. True, I mean, me included. This is only my second podcast with Stateside, and it's with the research and the travel and it's tough to it's deceivingly time consuming.
Yeah, and it's not free either.
No, it isn't.
No.
So I'm going to start doing it though, because how many episodes have you guys done? I'm sorry, I should have done my research, but I didn't.
No worries. This will be our 52nd episode.
Okay, so
like you said, it's second with Alan.
And it's more or less weekly, or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's been just about on average every week. We're kind of I don't know, not rebranding, but we're hitting the refresh button on the podcast right about the 50th episode. I was doing the show with two other guys, Andrew and Neil, and you know how life is. They're doing their own thing. Neil's a producer.
Fuck those guys.
Fuck the fucking. Finn just gets on and starts.
We actually have him here in studio. If you could say "fuck those guys" to their face.
Yeah, that would be.
Oh no! Now it's awkward.
No,
they're not here. They're not here.
That's the internet. No, but in all seriousness, Neil's a major dude. He's a producer I represent, and he's a busy guy. So it just wasn't the best fit. And so I just kept doing it alone for the past month and a half, and then decided I don't want to do it alone. And Alan is a major dude. And he's also a talented art director and designer. And we want to have the show eventually up on YouTube. So he walked into the room, he's like, this looks like your room when you're 15. Like it's a bunch of posters.
Yeah, it's definitely time for the show to kind of turn a corner. And I think that's what we've been working at for a couple of weeks. So
yeah, we're excited.
Well, Alan, I'd be interested to hear more about your story. Like I said, I actually did graphic design for a long time. So I'm, pretty passionate about that too. And as many of the, I have a lot of criticisms of the music industry, but one thing that I like about the music industry is that there's a lot of really fucking good designers and illustrators in the music world.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a testament just to the competition to get in. I mean, I'm usually the first to say that my skill level upon beginning my work at Rise Records, that really wasn't what got me in the door. It was like a lot of people, it was networking and right place, right time. And honestly, being there just within the rat race and kind of, I used to think that I was fast and efficient. And then when I started working there and my client base essentially goes from 2 to 3 bands a month as a freelancer to 200 plus bands on a roster, some of which are more needy than others. You learn to kind of flex some muscles that you didn't even know that you had. So that's it. So it's been amazing. But honestly, I feel like, and even before this podcast, like I said, I did my research on you, and what I love is that I feel like we have some some huge similarities in how we came up, and then also some huge differences where yours was a little less music based in terms of like actual, like playing and being a part of like a band and having that be your focus. That was my focus. My plan A was be a rock star. And then when I saw the reality of that situation, it quickly became, not a plan at all. And so the plan B was start moving towards the skill that you built in an effort to become a rock star. And it's a very, as you know, it's a very entrepreneurial thing. Like you've got to try to get that band branded and marketed well. And we didn't know who to go to. So I was like, let me figure it out. I just downloaded this thing called Photoshop. I heard it's cool. I think it was Photoshop 7 was my intro to it. And, you go through that kind of unconscious incompetence for, a decade or however long it takes until you start to kind of understand the game a bit. And it builds from there slowly, but very fast at the same time. It's a really odd thing.
I'm in the conscious incompetence phase now.
That's awesome. That's actually incredibly humble of you to even say that. Because I know some guys that have been in it for half the time you have been that are like, no, I'm in the conscious competence phase. And I have been basically the whole time.
Right.
Oh, man. I don't know about you guys, but the older I get, it's not that I'm not confident. It isn't that necessarily. It's just, especially from working with as many just incredibly fucking talented people as I have, in particular in the last 5 or 6 years, just to me, the bar for greatness is so high.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I could never say that I meet that bar. I don't think I suck or anything like that, but when you are around people who are truly like elite world class at a thing, you realize how high that bar really is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are some dudes out there that I'm right there with you. I've met some people that maybe have, 50% the experience that I do, and they're just pure cyborg.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, okay, you're supposed to be doing. So then, in a weird, in one hand, you're like, it's discouraging, but in the other hand, if you think about it the right way, it's the exact opposite. It's incredibly encouraging.
This is exactly why I stopped doing design, because of exactly what you are talking about. Like I worked really fucking hard at it, and I definitely don't suck. I'm better than most. But I'm not a cyborg like that. There are people I worked with. I'm just like, what in the fuck? Like, how do you do that? You were so much better, and it comes so much more quickly to you than it does to me. That anything that I do, like I don't want to be like okay at it. Certainly not anything creative. Like I don't think anybody gets into a creative field with the goal of being pretty good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to feel like I am great at what I do. And I realized I was just never going to be as good as they are because, it's the same. People don't want to talk about like the role of genetics and things like that, but natural talent is a thing. We accept that in sports, but for whatever reason, we don't accept it in other fields, which I don't get.
Right.
And I realized I just don't have as much natural talent as they do for, art and design. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I have a natural talent for? And what I realized is I guess I'm a lot better at kind of marketing, the creative side of marketing and like business problem solving, I guess, which tying back to talking about zines and stuff like that, I realized that's the part I always kind of really liked more than anything else. And that I would like to think I am probably world class at. So I think it's really important for people to recognize like I wouldn't even say what they're, like you said to me, it's not their limit. It's not a negative thing. It just is what it is, and I think a lot of people frustrate themselves by attempting to be world class at a thing that they just don't have the talent to be world class at, especially in music. Like there's people that want to be Bring Me the Horizon, but you're not Ollie Sykes.
Right.
It's not going to fucking happen. I'm not Ollie Sykes either. That's why he is who he is. Like,
yeah, and it's kind of what makes it special, is people understanding that there isn't just an Ollie Sykes around every corner.
And you can't, no matter how hard you work, you can't be Ollie Sykes. You can't be LeBron. You can't be Floyd Mayweather. So you just have to come to terms with that, And to me, that's not a negative thing. That's just life.
Yeah, it honestly, it reminds me of James and I are both big Gary V fans.
I was just going to say that.
Are you a fan of Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always talking about you play to your strengths, not your weaknesses.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people are scared to sacrifice their ego and say, like, I'm just not the designer that so many people before me have been. So I'm going to move. But the first thing I think when you talk about that is that that's why you end up in these other endeavors where you're successful, is because you don't sit around trying to beat yourself over the head about something you're not into and that you're clearly not seeing success from. So you're constantly on the offensive instead of the defensive.
Well, Gary has one of the things he talks about, that people don't pick up on, because they pick up on. So I never met him, but we did a bunch of stuff with him at Creative Live, because the CEO of Creative Live is friends with them. They've known each other for a long time. So we did a bunch of stuff with him. People pick up on the kind of obvious things that he says. They brand him as like a motivational speaker. And, there's a little bit of that. But one of the things he talks about that nobody really picks up on is the whole thing about, like, you don't have to be the number one. You'd be a great number 14 or number 7.
Right.
Like, that is such a smart, insightful thing to say. And more people should really ask themselves, would I be better off as the number 7? Would I be happier as the number 7? That's really the point. The point is not like either you are LeBron James or you're shit, like, it's not a binary thing where either have to be the best in the world or you're a total fucking loser. Like, there's a whole spectrum in between. And maybe you would be happier, like, just coming to terms with the fact that you are the third string backup kicker, not the star quarterback.
Yeah, I'd much rather play the game than not play at all, just because I don't get to be LeBron.
Exactly. So I think more people really should embrace, just be realistic about who we are. And if it turns out that we're the number 7, like, be stoked on that. Being number 7 is still pretty cool.
Yeah. And so go back on something you were talking about earlier. The value or the reason that we do all this stuff, the reason you're in a band or you make art or anything worth doing, it's not just to be fucking happy. I could be happy going to Disneyland. I could be happy watching a stupid movie. That's not the point. The point is to do something fulfilling. Mm-hmm. The point is to work hard at something and make something happen. Like, just same thing with a podcast. This isn't always fun, but that's not the fucking point. And I think that
if it was fun all the time,
no, it really wouldn't. Exactly. That resistance and that pull, the ebb and flow of hard and easy, that's why we do it. And again, it's one of the things I love about how because you kind of have a few different things on your channel. You do the how did they get so big, and then you kind of have more like a podcast where you just have your laptop open, you're just talking about one topic and just kind of surfing around.
I've only done a couple of those because
I like them, by the way.
I like them too, but you got to focus, I think, on one thing. And
I think the channel might not be the best place for it. The podcast would be.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would like to do more of those, but I only did a few for that reason, because it was just clear to me what people wanted. So
yeah, exactly.
That's another thing I would say, since I am giving advice, because I have a fucking microphone in front of me and I'm going to talk and everyone else is going to listen. This is America. But maybe a piece of advice that I wish that I could give, myself in the past that might be helpful for other people is, like, you don't get to choose what your lane is. You just get to, like, find it. And once you find it, like, just stay in that lane and give the people what they want is what I would say. So, like, for example, in the back when I was in the design agency world, we did industrial design. So the way that works is there's designers who sketch the thing. So if we're working on, a watch or a backpack or whatever the fuck it is, they'll sketch the thing, they'll make the pretty picture. And then there's people who take that sketch and turn it into, like, actual 3D geometry in the software. And it's perceived that the designers are the creative ones, and the people who make the models are not as creative or whatever. And so we had this one guy that we worked with, an employee who was not the world's best designer, but he was really fucking good at the 3D part of it. And he was really frustrated because he wanted to be the designer. And we kept telling him, like, Tony, you're so fucking good at like the 3D stuff. You're so much better at that than everybody else. Why don't you just like embrace that? And why don't you just like own the fact that you're a fucking badass at doing SolidWorks? He eventually did. And he, instead of coming to work and being really frustrated every day because he wasn't a cat instead of a dog, he was like, you know what? I'm a dog and that's cool. I'm just going to like embrace being the SolidWorks guy.
Yeah.
And so to your point before, like I would enjoy doing some more like, commentary type stuff, but it doesn't seem like that's what people want from me on YouTube. And I'm not going to push against the river. I'm just grateful that people pay attention to me talking about anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so a few things with that. I want to know why the growth in the channel. Because I know you'd mentioned before a few times that it had been a channel for a while, and you put stuff up and and you didn't get a lot of response.
Right.
And then something changed over that time.
Yeah.
Is that kind of why?
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. For a long time, I kind of didn't really want to talk about music, just because, it's like anything else. Sometimes you get interested in other things, whatever. So I wanted to talk more about like business. And I tried, but people were not interested in me talking about business.
You mean like general business?
Yeah, pretty much, like
non-music related.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Like careers and stuff like that, because I'm really passionate about that. But that's not what people wanted from me. So, to what I was talking about before.
Maybe just on YouTube, because I would love to hear more of that from you.
Well,
but I think maybe on a podcast.
Well, now that you know about me from talking about music on YouTube, yes.
Right. Okay. Right.
You would never have known I existed otherwise.
That's the key.
Exactly.
That's a huge lesson.
Exactly. So I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'll talk about music. So I've written about music for many years on some blogs. I've written for some magazines that some of you guys might have heard of, like Substream and Decibel and Terrorizer and I don't know, some other ones I'm not thinking of. Metal Sucks. I used to write for those guys, Metal Injection. So I know that I can talk about this. And, it's like, to me, one of the things, one of the corners of YouTube, there's like personalities who can just read the phone book and we think it's entertaining because they're so charismatic. And I'm not that person. And then the other corner of YouTube, I think, is like subject matter experts who may not be the most charismatic person in the world, but they have just insanely deep knowledge about some particular thing, which for better or for worse, I know a lot about, this weird music. So, and I've built a following in the past talking about it. So I said, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just talk about music. Maybe people will care about that. And they did. And the other thing that I have, people have told me that I'm good at, which I guess I am good at, is taking like a big, complex mass of information and distilling it down into like bullet points. So that's basically what I do with my videos is, why did this or that become popular or not popular, or, you know what I mean? And like, and so I learned just like how Tony learned to embrace SolidWorks, I have learned to embrace talking about music, because even though I don't necessarily give a fuck about what the best NoFX record is, what I do care about or enjoy is I like to figure out why people like what they like, and whether that is food or a car or hiking, or it doesn't matter to me. It just so happens that because I know so much about music, that it would make sense to me. It's a good fit for me to figure out why people like the music they like, which is essentially what my channel is about.
And I like that you make it really clear. And it's one of the things I knew that I would enjoy talking to you, because I kind of say this stuff a lot. You make it very clear that it's not about what you like. You know what I mean? You've said that many times. Like, look, this isn't Slipknot. This video about Slipknot or Blink or Bring Me the Horizon, whoever it is, it's not about me. It's about you. It's about what do you, the people, like, and why do you like it? And I think that's
fuck what I like or don't like.
That's right, man. We're old dudes who grew up with hardcore, and like it doesn't fucking matter what bands I like. I'm 35 years old. Ain't no one giving a fuck what I like. It doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. And it's like, now we're in this place in the industry where sincerity is everything. You know, you can't just bullshit and I don't know. I mean, that's why I like you, Alan. You're a very genuine, sincere guy, and it's pretty obvious what you're into and what you're not into. But at the end of the day, you're more like Finn. Like you want to get down to why things work. Yeah,
well, I think that's the magic of hitting the age that the three of us are around. And for me, I mean, that's anything over 30, because that's where I just start. No shit. Like before you started talking, James, when Finn was wrapping up, I almost responded to everything he said. A lot of intelligent stuff.
Yeah.
I almost followed up with, so Finn, do you have any pets? Because that's really all I cared about for some weird reason. Right at that. Not that I wasn't listening to what he said, but I'm just at 21. I would have been like, dude, don't say that. It's going to sound rude. But at 32, I'm like, I'm interested in that.
That's what I want to hear about.
I want to know right now. I want to
know if he's a dog or cat guy.
And I also want to know which side of my brain is right. Is because sometimes when he's talking and I'm actively listening, but I'm also like, the house looks really neat, so I don't believe he has a dog. But he also doesn't strike me as a cat person. So I've got this inner kind of debate going on, and now I just want to know which Alan is correct.
Yeah, what are you? Are you a dog or cat guy or none?
I love any animal that loves me.
Oh, that's a good answer.
I don't care whether it's a goat or a horse or a rabbit or a snake.
But do you have a pet?
We have a cat, yes. And
so I was wrong.
Sleeping on this couch right behind me. I would love to have a dog, but
okay.
I don't think. I mean, I love our cat too. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I don't think we'd be very good dog parents. You know, I know some people are cool with the idea of putting a dog in a crate all day, and maybe dogs are cool with that. But it doesn't feel right to me.
What do you do with your dog?
I put her in a crate always, even when I'm home. No, I'm kidding.
Fucking monster.
Yeah. I've had her for 4 years. She's been in a crate the entire time. Yeah. No, I rescued a pit bull. I can't believe I just said rescue because I make fun of people for doing that. But
boy, what a cool guy, Alan! Yeah. Jesus Christ, you want a fucking trophy?
Where should I send your medal?
So I'm not about to say rescue.
Worse than the vegan.
Yeah, so I got a pit bull maybe 4 years ago, but I'm also just I'm an insane dog person. Like I love dogs. Unfortunately, I would say 2 weeks before I got her, because I was unemployed when I got her, and I was like, I'm going to do some freelance work, and then I need a bit of a project. And I had in my childhood, we at one point had 7 dogs. We had quite a bit of land, and
holy shit,
I'm very comfortable with dogs, and I enjoy training them. So I was like, I need a bit of a project outside of freelance. So I get her, and then we're no shit laying in bed watching Cops, and she's asleep on me, and I'm still getting used to her. She's getting used to me. And I get a text asking me to come work at Rise Records. So I'm like, I just went from all the time in the world to 10 hours a day, gotta go. I know it's been a good 2 weeks, but now I'm going to basically adopt you, and you're just going to hang out in this duplex and wonder what the fuck is up. We made it work. I mean, now that I bought a house, she's in her first domicile where she is allowed to be. Like, I didn't have to lie about. I've had 4 apartments before this where I'm like, yeah, no dog. Or if they see the dog, I'm like, they ask me what breed the dog is, and I say, I think it's a terrier mix. Like, I'm not about to say pit bull because you're going to say no. But yeah, I'm massive into dogs. Right now she just she chills in the basement. I put on I got a TV down there, and I put on that 15-hour relaxing dog music clip that's on YouTube. I don't know if you can call it a clip because it's like half a day long.
What kind of music is that?
It's honestly, it drove me nuts the 2 seconds I heard it. It's a lot of like.
Can I hear it right now?
It's kind of some weird ominous tones to me anyway. I didn't really.
Ominous tones.
Yeah, I didn't dig it, but.
Have you seen the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Yes.
Where
that might be my favorite movie.
Dude, it's so good.
It's not a bad movie at all.
Ominous.
What if the relaxing dog music was just 15 hours of Woe Is Me?
That would be sick.
Relaxing dog music. Let's share this with
I want to know how did they decide that this was relaxing to
That's
dogs?
my thing.
I know.
Like, how did they pull? How many dogs did they pull on?
Pretty subjective.
Yeah.
Is this it? No? Which one?
Doesn't look like it. I put in. Oh, it's that one. Yep.
This one?
Yep, that one.
This one?
Yep.
It
like right out of the gate, I didn't like
it. Helped 4 million dogs. How did they?
That's a lot of time.
How did they calculate that it was 4 million dogs?
I mean,
yeah,
to me,
that's a good question.
this is Stranger Things season 3. That's all it sounds like to me.
This sounds like depressed. I want to kill myself
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, really.
But this is
dog
on. This is
looks
in my
like
living room
low
right now.
self-esteem, too.
Yeah, that dog looks bummed,
Yep.
dude.
That dog saying, "Turn it off, dude."
Okay, I'm turning it off now. Jesus, God.
Please
Bummer.
subscribe to help more dogs. Well, I want to help dogs, so I guess I better subscribe. Gee,
Yeah.
Fucking relax.
did you
Jesus.
subscribe? Okay,
no,
good.
I did not.
Nope.
So I think a dog just died. I'll like
Oh,
it though.
man.
There, I just like
This
this.
this podcast just took a dark turn.
Yeah, real dark. Suicide and dog death in like
Yeah.
10 seconds.
But anyway, back to the point. I'm glad that you guys can you can be honest with yourself and say, I don't know that a dog would really thrive here. So
Yeah.
why bring it in here?
Yeah, don't want to be a good. Although we sometimes joke about, we love our cat very, 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 very much. But sometimes we joke about it. We'll say like, "Well, what kind of dog should we get when Kitty dies?"
What's the name of your cat? Is it Kitty?
Her name is Banana, but
That's such a good name for a cat.
I have a thing where I never use, for some reason, I have never called my wife by her name to her.
Right.
Ever.
Right. That means you love her, by the way.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I
It
have
just-
like 700 nicknames for my wife and my cats.
I don't use any pronoun for her when I'm talking to her. Like I don't say, "Hey, you," or maybe like I just like, "Hey, look." I just for some reason, using any sort of pronoun or name for her to her feels so strange to me.
I like that. Is your cat a girl or a boy?
She is a girl, yes.
And what does Banana look like?
Well, I don't want to bother her, but she's a tortie. So
Aw.
yeah, she's a sweetheart. I got her from the shelter. So have you guys ever heard of Paws? I don't know if they have it in Oregon.
It sounds familiar.
So they have a cool thing where they give you a personality test, and they've also like graded all their animals. I think they have dogs also. So there's like 9 different categories. Basically, they rank it on 2 axes. One is like how much energy it has, and the other is like how affectionate it is. And
Right.
I said, I want the one with the most affection and the least energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that's
why
ideal.
you get a cat, for Christ's
I
sake.
was like, what? Who wants a cat
Yeah,
that like
just
is
an asset.
playful and distant? Like,
Yeah, you send me the most pumped up, least loving cat
Yeah.
you can.
right?
Why get a cat?
Full serial killer cat, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, they're like, I hate you. Leave me alone. Wait, feed me. Okay, now go away.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get back to serious stuff, guys. Let's
Yeah.
be serious people for a second here. Okay, what is it like being on YouTube today? Experience with the growth of the channel, etc.
Well, I think that you should have written that question out more completely. That's
That's
what
a
I think.
Terrible question.
Yeah. Well, so I will answer. I guess the main thing
That was
there,
like a person who doesn't speak English wrote it.
Right. Yeah, it was
a
translated.
Russian immigrant.
so well, I'll give you.
I probably wrote that while walking.
It's a question from one of our Russian fans.
Okay, well, I will give you a
Vlad.
funny tidbit since it's Thanksgiving. So my wife's entire family is from Vietnam, and
Whoa,
a lot of them don't speak English very well. And
that's
so,
fun.
you know, there's like the kids' table at Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
So for some reason or another, but her sisters are all married to American guys. For some reason or another, I got stuck at what I called the ESL table at Thanksgiving last year, where I was the only person there who doesn't speak Vietnamese. So
Oh,
sitting
bummer.
there for an hour and a half, just listening to her watching her family like blab at each other in Vietnamese.
Just having a great time talking
Yeah.
shit about you.
Exactly. Oh, they do. Yes.
Yeah, this fucking white boy.
Yes. But anyhow, so the as far as the growth of the channel goes, I think it's interesting, and it kind of makes me identify a little bit with some of these bands. Now, granted, they're experiencing something that's like 100 times bigger than what I have, but you know, I got like 20,000 new subscribers last month.
It's crazy.
And, you know, I got like 200,000 views on a couple of videos and stuff, which is small potatoes, like, you know, in the grand scheme of things. But for me to suddenly have 20,000, you know, I've had a decent following before, but it came much more slowly. And so those people knew me. And if I said X, they would be able to contextualize it because they read or heard a bunch of things that I said before. And so they, would interpret it maybe a little bit more fairly, I guess, than strangers might. And so it kind of made me really understand, like, what about these bands that get really famous? So if I'm experiencing a 0.5 out of 10, what about a band that becomes really famous really quickly, like Green Day or something like that goes from playing Gilman, playing a fucking stadium 2 months later.
In their early 20s too.
Yeah. And you see them like, exactly. So I just turned 40, and that's exactly what I was thinking, is like, wow, how would I handle?
Yeah.
I if I was 22, I sure would have said some real fucking dumb stuff that probably would have come back to haunt me.
I know. Fuck, I think about this shit all the time, dude. Oh God, I would. You don't want to know. I was such a shitbag at 22. I was such a turd. Like, no one should allow me to say anything, or, oh my God. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. These bands get big so quickly. But anyway, back to you. So, I mean, have you had like, the comment section on YouTube is just infamous for being negative and a shithole place.
So I have quite a bit of experience with that, because I had a pretty popular blog before, and I was, I think, the most popular writer on Metal Sucks for many years. So I have, lots of experience getting like nasty comments and stuff, and it doesn't really bother me for the most part. It does get old. Like, if you get literally 1,000 shitty comments in like half a day, it gets a little old, but it's fine. It's more the part that's more, so I guess what I believe, well, I don't believe it, I know this is true, is that you get what you give. So the kind of energy you put out is the kind of energy you're going to get back. And so I try very hard to put out like positive, friendly energy. And that doesn't mean I get it back all the time, but like, look at the comments on my Green Day video, and you guys know how many people hate Green Day, right? Yeah. You would expect that to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you would expect that to be a flood of people talking, oh, they're not punk, whatever. You can imagine, and there's very little of that, there's a little bit of it, but really the comments on there are overall like really positive.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like what I was saying. I think that for the most part, you get what you give. And so I've tried very hard to cultivate a community, of people who don't leave nasty comments.
Yeah, I love that. So basically you're taking the time up front to set up an environment where people are encouraged to be constructive and positive. And if they have a disagreement, they're not going to be just total assholes for no reason.
Exactly. And so another thing that which is, I guess, rare on YouTube, is if I get something wrong, or if somebody brings up something I didn't think about, then I say it. Like, actually, You're right. I probably should have said that. Or, good point. I think I got that one wrong,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little thing, but it goes a long way. I mean, how often, first of all, I read all my comments, and I reply to most of, maybe not most, but a very good chunk of them, especially if there's something like nice or constructive or something like that. And so, you set the tone of the conversation. And it doesn't mean people are going to follow it 100% of the time, but by and large they do. So if they see that you are friendly and nice, and you're engaging with people, and you're directing the conversation in like a constructive way, then they'll either follow it or they'll leave because they don't like it. And that's fine.
That's right. Right. There's a lot of like shitty, I mean, look at the biggest YouTubers out there, the Logan Pauls, awful. It's absolute garbage, but they put garbage out and they get garbage back.
Exactly.
He's one of the most viewed YouTubers, but he's also one of the most hated YouTubers. And there's a reason for it.
I'm curious. I think he's like 21 or 22.
Oh, God, what a disaster.
So to our point before, and and I don't, I can't stand his content, but I don't really fault him for it, because I probably would have done and said, I think I'm a nice person, but I definitely would have done and said some equally obnoxious things at that age.
Yep.
And especially if you have literally tens of millions of people giving you positive reinforcement.
And tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you blame him for doing it?
I know.
I mean, just the same as like, You see a lot of, like, Justin Bieber is a good example
Yeah.
of this. He's been famous since he was a child, and he is like super rich, super famous, gorgeous, and he's had people telling him he's the most, that he's God since he was like
Mhm.
11 years old. How could he possibly be any different?
I know. It's insane to expect anything different.
I feel bad for him in a lot of ways, actually.
Speaking of garbage content, one of the videos I really liked from you, you were talking about how you were comparing the success of bands who put out original songs and original music videos, original art, versus people, goofy ass people with cool haircuts will cover a song. And that cover of a song that's done with a kazoo and a fucking,
Right.
it's like zany fucking video of the Green Day
Yeah.
song.
So what I was talking,
way more views.
Yeah. So what I was talking about is there's a band called Our Last Night, which is basically like a metalcore cover band, I guess. I mean, they have originals, but to your point, their covers get 100 times more interest than anybody. And this is like, I actually kind of regret making that video, because although I believe in anything, I mean, I agree with everything I said in it, but in regard to what we were talking about before, I just kind of wish I wouldn't have put that energy out there. So I don't think I'll ever do anything.
How come?
I don't want people, like I said, it's like the thumbnail says, like, stop watching this crap.
Yeah. Being a little judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not really the energy I want to be putting out.
Right.
So, but that said,
but to be fair, you have balanced a lot of your content in the message of what you do with the problem with hardcore, or the problem with these scenes, that they can be very elitist.
Yeah.
So, you have pointed that out. Like,
yeah, but
you gotta have a balance.
Yeah, I don't want to have a balance. I'm just not interested in putting out anything negative. So I kind of wish I wouldn't have done that.
Especially on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not adding. It's not making.
Well, it's good that you know that. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
I
but
think that's why you'll do well.
That said, so what I was talking about in that video was that cover band, and in general the larger phenomenon of like all these like zany covers of like, a Japanese schoolgirl plays Meshuggah on a tuba, and it just, these things get so much fucking traffic, and I don't blame, and it's frustrating to me specifically, like, that they, when normies watch that stuff, I get it, they are just looking for something funny. But what's aggravating to me is that metal fans watch that stuff, and they watch it more than they pay attention to new bands.
Right.
And it just, like, so if you look at, I don't know, look at any big metal blog, Metal Sucks or whatever, like, you can see how many, you can see the engagement on stuff, and any of that, like, basically what gets engagement is either that or, Ozzy called the drummer for Iron Maiden a butt face.
Yeah. Gossip.
Just this lowest common denominator shit. And I don't blame the people who create it, or like, I'm friends with the guys from Metal Sucks. I know that they don't like publishing that stuff, but they do it because it's a business and that's what people want to read. So the point of that video was really directed not so much at the creators, but the consumers. Like, we created that situation by rewarding it with our eyeballs or clicks. So stop watching it. Like, I get why these cover bands are cover bands, because people watch it. Yeah. And it's because they're not paying attention to the originals. So, in our world, we claim to, have so much respect for original art and blah, blah, blah. We claim that our taste level is up here, but then there's 10 million views of Japanese schoolgirl playing Meshuggah on a bassoon.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of my point of that video. So I don't fault anybody for making it, it's, especially if that's their job. If that's what you want to do with your time and people are into it, then I get it. It's a business, but I really wish people would give it less attention. It's just like most lowest common denominator garbage, which, like, one thing that encourages me very much about YouTube in particular is that there's the taste level on YouTube, I think, has gotten so much better in the past, like, 4 years, I would say. Like, you guys remember in like 2010 or something like that, what was on YouTube?
Oh God.
Just trash.
Yeah. it was just cat videos.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And now it's stuff like this conversation that we're having right now, which I think is pretty cool.
It's true. Very promising.
Yeah, and that just came around in the past couple of years. And there's the other thing that's encouraging to me as an older person is that there's a lot of older people. Like there weren't people our age on YouTube in 2010. It was kids.
And it's like you've pointed out before. I mean, either get on the train or you get off. This is what is happening. The cable is going to be gone. It's just gone. The Fox News, ABC, that is Instagram. Like Gary Vee always talks about. That's the equivalent to those big broadcasting networks now. It is YouTube and I guess Netflix and everything like that. So that's where everything's going, whether you're old, young, fat, it doesn't matter. Like that's what it is now. That's it. It's where everything is. I go to YouTube all the time now. And I never thought I'd be a guy that watched fucking YouTube channel. I do all the time now.
Same. It's like I would rather watch YouTube than anything else. I'd rather watch YouTube than Netflix or TV or anything else. Which again, I used to think YouTube was garbage.
Yep.
But as we were talking about, and as Gary talks about, my point of view on any of these things changes by the day. So YouTube might suck today, but if it's great tomorrow, then I'm on board.
And also, I mean, a lot of that stuff, it's like saying someone that says, I don't like YouTube is like saying, I don't like ice cream. It's like, there's a lot of flavors out there, man.
Or like saying, I don't like food.
I don't like food. Yeah, it's even more like saying I don't like food. I mean, there's something on YouTube for everybody because it's not one thing. It's just a broadcasting opportunity for everyone. And there's like the barrier to entry is really, everything's changed. You don't need a huge budget. You don't need to convince a studio to let you have a show. You can just go do it. There's no
Alan, what are your favorite channels?
I like a lot of the podcasters for sure.
I said Alan, not James.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jeez. Hogging the microphone over there.
So this is the James podcast and more about
what's funny is I thought I heard Alan, but I was like, maybe I'm just being egotistical. And then,
no, I spaced out.
Yeah, so my thing lately, it's not a channel. I kind of go through I don't really do the channel subscribe kind of thing because I noticed that a lot of channels will put out some shit that I'm into and then a handful of duds and then some shit that I'm into and a handful of duds. So I don't really trust channel to channel. I think I have a few. I subscribe to, my 14-year-old brother has a video game thing. I'm going to do that, just to be supportive. But I typically just go through just rabbit holes and I kind of fetish out on searches. And my latest thing has been just classic Tom Green clips, just full episodes of Tom Green. And then recently super obsessed with Larry King Now, which is just it's what we're doing right now, except
he's great.
But his guests mean a lot more than any of us do in the world. And it's so fascinating. I love that he's kind of hit this point. He could be 125 or 65. I don't even know, but
close to 125.
He just doesn't care. And I actually on my Instagram story the other day, I posted this thing where who was it? Who was his guest? I can't remember who his guest was, but he said something about what's something you believed in as a kid that you later felt like a fool for thinking was real. And the guest was might have been Bill Maher. The guest just said God. And what I love about
it was Tom Segura.
Was it Tom Segura?
I think it might have been Tom Segura.
What I love about Larry King is that so many people would ask that question, get an answer, move on to the next question. But Larry King at his age, he's just like, the world wants to know what I think about, the answer to this question. So he'll stop and almost forget that he's filming a show. And he'll be like, oh, this is just a conversation, a closed conversation between me and somebody else.
Yeah.
So when somebody said God, he looked at him and was like, me too. And they just go on this weird little tangent about it. And he's just like, he's the world's crazy grandpa. And I'm just so into that. So I've been obsessed just watching Larry King in my living room with my pit bull.
It's great. That's definitely a good one.
I'm a big fan. There's two channels that I really like a lot. So my, about half of my family maybe worked in corrections. So my dad was a corrections officer. My stepmom worked at a prison also.
That's awesome.
My aunt worked at a juvenile detention facility, and my cousin, her son, is essentially a parole officer now. A little bit different than that, but basically a parole officer. So I grew up hearing about prison all the time. So I watched a lot of prison channels.
Scared Straight and stuff?
No. There's one called Fresh Out that's really good.
Oh, yeah.
I think you guys would like it. It's a guy who did a bunch of Fed time. So for those who don't know, there's Fed time and there's state time. They're a little bit different. He did a bunch of Fed time for bank robbery. I think he did like 9 years or something. And so he just kind of he interviews people that came out of prison and they just talk about what they learned. He's a really thoughtful guy. So that's a really good one. And there's another guy that was sort of one of his friends, this guy named OG Badger, who started his own channel. What's really interesting about it, the guy that does Fresh Out, and I guess sort of touches on a lot of the same things I talk about on my channel. The guy who does Fresh Out is this big black guy named Big Herc. And Badger is, he doesn't say, but I think he must have been in the Aryan Brotherhood because he's got the right tattoos and stuff like that. And yet they're friends, so they're able to like put aside the prison politics, which are a much more serious version of scene politics, right? Because it's like people actually die over that stuff in prison, and yet these two, and outside of prison too, and yet these guys are able to put that aside and have these cool conversations and stuff like that. So those are like two of my current favorite channels.
Very cool. I've been digging the Vice News channel. That's a good one. I mean, that's like big time.
Yeah, I feel like Vice is all over the place. It'll be
it's not always good, but most times.
Yeah, there's like some current stuff, and then it'll just be like, oh, these two girls went to go work as sex workers in the tiniest town in Alabama.
Like super random.
And you're just like, that sounds insane. I mean, I'll watch it, but it's weird.
Yeah, it can be a bummer too.
Do you guys watch what is the Jameel is it Jameel Maddox?
Is it a Netflix thing?
Yeah, no, it's a Vice thing. It's Hate Thy Neighbor. Do you guys watch that at all?
I think I know the guy that's been on Gary Vaynerchuk's.
Maybe. I don't know. But I watched all of season 1 and it was awesome. There's just it's a little political. It's not really my thing, but the way that they produce the show, it's super interesting. Essentially, he just kind of he's from the UK. He's I want to say, I don't know if he's half black or full black, but and he's got like an English accent. He's just a very like cultured dude.
Oh, thank you.
And he'll just go hang with super extremist KKK guys.
Yep.
And they're not a fan of him at all, but he's just like, I just want to talk. I just want to kind of
I've seen this guy. Yeah, he's a really interesting guy.
Yeah, that whole first season was amazing. I don't know if I completed the second season, but from what I remember, it was awesome.
Have you guys seen the one where it's another Vice one where the guy, I saw him on Rogan's podcast and then I went and started to watch the show on Vice. He's a guy that goes around and like basically tries drugs from around the world.
Oh yeah. He's a professor, isn't he?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a bonehead, like this guy's getting fucked up. But it's way more interesting.
He's a sharp guy.
Yeah, really smart.
Anytime Rogan talks about, anytime the topic of like animals or drugs comes up, I'm out. I instantly delete the episode.
Like, see ya, which happens to be a lot.
Okay. Yep, exactly. So I don't make it through a lot of them. I was a religious listener since, I don't know, 2009 or whenever he started doing it.
Can you specify, what do you mean when he talks about animals?
Like,
or do you mean like when he just
Jamie, pull up that picture of that jacked chimp.
Gotcha.
Did you guys know that a 150-pound chimp can pull 1,200 pounds?
I know. He really gets off on
1,200 pounds. That thing could tear your fucking arms off, Alan.
Yeah.
Like, Jamie, look at this one over here. I'm just okay. I'm done. Or the wolves or anything,
Yeah, he loves like wolves, and he's obsessed with coyotes for some reason.
Yes.
And how similar they are to wolves. He's such a stoner.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
which
the
is
same
endearing,
as you.
though.
For me, it's whenever he talks about Regenikine, he's like, there's this doctor in Germany. It's Regenikine, man. They put.
Listen, I got these stem cells in my shoulder, and it was just like, this thing had been killing me for years. And after I went to Germany, it was just like overnight.
Like, it must be nice to be a multimillionaire.
The big pharma, they don't want this stuff to be legal in the U.S. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And that'll be like a 45-minute rant.
Exactly.
Yeah, I watched that episode. He had Mel Gibson and then Mel Gibson's father's doctor on it, and like, I can't believe I watched that whole episode. But yeah, it was
so random.
A lot of the same shit just being said over and over, and it was cool. Right. I mean, they went to Panama and they saved Mel's dad's life or something. I guess I don't know. It was
something.
That show gets super wacky. I'm very selective on. Yeah, episodes I watch.
I agree.
Well, it's a lot better when he used to have comedians on all the time who are just dummies. I mean,
Big old dumbos.
They're funny, but they.
And I also hated the Red Band days. Brian,
really?
I can't stand that fucking guy. I mean, I think he's funny and whatever, but I didn't like him in the context of Rogan.
Yeah, you need him in small doses because
when Rogan was mean to him, he was always fucking bullying.
I mean, I
hated
of get that. I think you put Red Band around me for 2 weeks. I'm probably not going to be a.
Well, he would just blurt out dumb shit all the time that would derail the conversation, and
then he would laugh about it for 45 minutes, and you're like, dude, there's listeners. Like, try to reel it in.
I think of Rogan's podcast as like we were talking about YouTube earlier. It's just a thing that there's everything on there. Like, it's not all going to be for you. And he talks about that. Like, you'll have hunters on. If you're not into hunting, don't check that one out.
Yeah.
I did enjoy when he had James Hetfield on there talking about beekeeping though.
Yeah. It's the most random shit. And he'll always have people on. Like, if he had you on, Finn, my guess is he wouldn't even mention Punk Rock MBA. He wouldn't mention Academy. That's not the objective of being on Rogan's podcast.
No, we'd be talking about that Jack Chimp.
We'd be talking about the Jack Chimp.
He wants to pull the most mundane thing out of people and then make that. Which is
kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a skill right there. For me, it's if I see a guest and the word doctors in there, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'll watch it next week.
What's the one he was the girl?
Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
Yeah. I'm like, see ya.
I'm like, cool, pass.
See ya.
And then next week it's Steve-O, and I'm like, I'm listening so hard.
Listen so hard, yeah.
I listen to most of the MMA ones because I've been a huge MMA fan since.
We are too.
Oh, boom!
There's a few fighters who I don't want to hear anything from Eddie Bravo's mouth ever for the rest.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, man.
That guy's a maniac.
Jiu-jitsu wise, we got to all bow down to it, but the fucking flat Earth shit and conspiracy theory. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
God, he's exhausting.
Probably don't ever need to hear from. What the fuck? Why can't I remember his name? Tim Kennedy ever again?
Yeah, I'm with you.
See, I like Kennedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm a fan, dude. I like Tim Kennedy. I think he's a beast.
Brian Stan might be my favorite MMA guest that he ever had.
Oh, I don't know who.
Brian Stan he's the straightest arrow. Like that guy is.
Which one is
vanilla ice cream?
What do I not know?
He's all I know is he's got a Slipknot tattoo.
Oh, does he?
Yeah,
he's
on
his
185er. Yeah.
He might actually still be in the Marines. I'm not sure.
Oh, he's a fighter.
He's the dude that Joe always wants to run for president.
Yeah, I'd consider giving him my vote.
I would definitely consider it.
Yeah. He is the straightest arrow that there ever was. He's like a real life GI Joe.
Yeah,
is it just
all day? Yep.
Pop up. That guy?
Yep.
He's got the Slipknot S between his shoulder blades. And I can't believe no one ever
talks about
it.
Mr. Jaw. Yeah, he's a bad mofo. Is he Bellator now, or is he still UFC?
I think he retired.
Yeah, he used to do some commentating for UFC, and I loved him as a commentator.
He fought Chael Sonnen.
Yep.
Okay.
He knocked out Vanderlei too, I believe.
Yeah, he did.
You know, Chael is a local Oregon dude.
Yep, that's right. The gangster from West Lynn.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
Finn, I would die to know your opinion on Chael Sonnen.
I think he's hilarious, and I would not trust him farther than I could throw him, which is not very far.
That's the perfect answer. Yeah.
I mean, he's a convicted felon. He
he
popped 3 times for PEDs.
He's very open about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, if I can get away with it, I'll do it again.
Exactly. He likes to reply to that accusation with the word allegedly.
Right.
Even though it's very much in stone.
My favorite one. Did you guys ever listen to the SureDog podcast?
A little bit, yeah.
I've never.
So this was maybe 2009, before people were kind of on to Chael's shtick. When he had just kind of, so you guys may remember, he used to be really boring. Like nobody gave a fuck about Chael at all.
He would wrestle and then he would lose second round via triangle choke.
Exactly.
That was his move.
Yes. Nobody cared at all about him. And then suddenly he just basically decided to turn heel, and turns out he's really entertaining. And then he got really big. So this was right after he turned heel, and people weren't quite hip to it yet. He was on SureDog Radio. And he had fought on the same card as GSP. I don't remember which one it was, but he had fought third under GSP or whatever. And so they interviewed him on SureDog Radio about it. He was like, well, GSP actually personally requested me to be on that card because he knew what a draw I am. And the host was like, wow, really? And he was like, oh fuck, they thought I was serious. So he's like, well, I mean, that's what I was told. I haven't actually asked GSP about it myself. But that's what I was told. You know what? Let me give him a call right now. Because I would hate to give you bad information. So he
so good.
Some random phone number and it rings and rings. He's like, well, you know what? GSP's not picking up right now. So let me just confirm that and get back to you. But that's my impression. Yes, is that he requested me to be on that card.
That's so legit.
That's right. So that must have been a while ago.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a massive Chael Sonnen fan. I usually go around saying that he's like one of maybe 3 people I could be starstruck by. Like I've been a fan of his for a while. I specifically remember UFC 117 was his rematch against Anderson Silva, and that was the most nervous I've ever been watching a fight. And I thought he had it, and
oh man,
the performance was solid, and he couldn't pull out the win, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah, man, that was Chael's underrated fighter. He was damn good. He really should have had, he should have been the champion. He was 30 seconds away from being the champion before he gave up the fucking triangle, as always. Yeah, or even the one that nobody talks about, which is crazy, is his fight against John Jones, where John Jones broke his big toe, and if Chael could have just held on, he would have. I mean, it would have been a cheap win because it would have been, via disqualification or whatever the verbiage would have been. But yeah, it's so crazy. He's got a lot of those kind of finishes. Yeah, he does. So my only issue with Chael, which is I think where maybe you may be headed with this clip here, is that he kind of opened the door to the UFC as it is now, which is like way too WWE, too much shit talking and stuff for me. Chael did it like as a bit, it was funny. But now it's just everybody's talking shit. And unlike Chael, they're not funny. They're just talking shit. And I just really am not interested in that. Conor is pretty entertaining too. I can kind of tolerate it when he does it, but even then it just gets a little old. Conor's not clever like Chael is. So that's my only thing with Chael, is just that people realize like, oh, if you're just an obnoxious shithead, then you'll get attention, which is, the same thing that happens on YouTube and all these other places. So that part I'm not that excited about, but, Well, I always got the vibe that with Chael, like he would talk shit, but it was in, like you said, it was a very WWE thing. I heard that he became really close friends with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he started to share contacts with him and step up his kind of theatrical game. But, yeah, he was also the biggest company man ever. He would do his thing, but then he wouldn't say fuck off to the UFC, much like Conor does. Conor challenges the UFC and says, look at my numbers and, come back to me with a better offer because you would be screwed without me. So it's much more adversarial. Yeah. Yeah. So that's Conor definitely is the one that I wouldn't say ruined the sport for me, but made me like it a lot less. Right. For all the reasons you're talking about. But, I can't hate on him for doing it. He made himself rich as fuck off of it. I'm a huge fan. He's definitely a good fighter, but he's not the best. But dude, we saw that with Khabib. What do you think about that fight, Finn? Well, I mean, it's Khabib. There's only one way Conor was going to win that fight, which is puncher's chance. But I don't think at 155, I don't think he has the power that he did at 45. And even at 45, it's not like he was Anderson Silva just knocking people dead with one shot. He did a little bit, but he won by TKO. Not just like walk off KO. And I think that's what you have to do with Khabib, is you got to just like knock him dead with one shot on the way in, because, his chain wrestling is just so fucking good. His mat returns and his top pressure, like it's a terrifying man. It's awful. Yeah. Like how do you fucking beat that? After watching that fight, cause I root for Conor almost every time he fights. Like, I show up, I'm such a dork, show up my fucking Irish flag and I'm ready to go. Yeah. And all my buddies are like, all right, James, fucking have fun with that. He's going to get his ass whooped. Well, what I think Conor could have done differently, and obviously it's easy for me to say as just some guy in his living room here, but I would say Conor didn't look like his best in that fight. In particular, he usually has a lot better footwork. He's a lot better at like controlling the distance and working angles, which I think is really your only shot. And he had some good, I think it was the third round. Khabib couldn't take him down. So I think he got the better of that round. So, it is possible, but the problem is just like once Khabib gets on top of you, you pretty much have to write that round off. So, you'd have to do that for 3 out of 5 rounds, which is a tough order. But I think, the controlling the distance is where I think he had his best shot, because Khabib, he'll usually shoot that like low single from way outside. That's usually how he starts his chain wrestling that ends in the takedown. So if I was his coach, that's what I would ask for, but I'm not his coach and I'm not qualified to be his coach. So what the fuck do I know?
I know.
Yeah. Khabib is he's tough. He's a tough challenge. I think that Conor exploited a couple small things, but I remember, reading this article and Conor's coach, his head coach, John Kavanagh, kind of talked about how if he had it to do over again, they would have made Conor's game plan less defensive and more offensive. Because like you said, absolutely, his only chance was striking. And if you look at it, he just didn't throw the way that he did with any other opponent. And that's because he was waiting for the takedown. So much so that Khabib even landed a punch, which everybody wrote off Khabib's striking game. So right there, you're just like, listen, you're so worried about the takedown.
Right.
You're not even the true Conor. And your sentiments about that, I think everybody agrees with. The entire MMA community is like, that looked like a different Conor.
He wasn't fighting his fight, which is understandable because it's fucking Khabib.
Yeah, it's the scariest matchup for him.
I'd be interested in seeing a rematch. Conor doesn't deserve it, but
I would too.
Would be interested.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you'd say that.
What I would like to see is Khabib versus a prime Frankie Edgar. I think Frankie's a little past his prime now, but prime Frankie, that would be the fight because Frankie's so fast. His wrestling is so goddamn good.
What's the deal with Khabib's visa and all that shit? What's the news on that?
I think that right now there's still the athletic commission is still talking about it. I'm not 100% sure. For me, I want to see. I think that the Frankie Edgar fight would be good. I don't see the UFC giving him that next. He would for sure need to at least win one to get that. Plus, I think.
But who would be before him?
Well, I think that if I had to put my money on anybody, I think, and this is crazy to say because they've attempted to fight 5 times, I believe, but Tony Ferguson. I mean, that's the one where I'm like, I know you keep trying it, and Tony refuses to not wear sunglasses indoors, so he trips over things and tears his knee apart.
Yeah, he's a goofball, man.
He is. He's one of the weirdest dudes in the world, but I love it.
Blow out his knee
tripping
over like a mic cable?
Yeah, he tripped over a cable doing press for the fight.
Yeah.
And Dana White said, like, it's because this motherfucker won't not wear sunglasses
and
anymore.
He, like, destroyed his knee.
Yeah, eviscerated it. Needed surgery. That
was a good fight, though.
Yeah.
I was fun to watch, man.
I would love to see it.
I am a certified Anthony Pettis hater. So
dude,
I'm slowly getting there too. I'm pretty tired with it. The Showtime kick was cool, and then since then it's been kind of whatever.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating because his game plan is basically. So here, if I was his coach, I'd be like, okay, Anthony, here's your game plan. If you don't knock him out in the first 30 seconds, just walk backwards for the rest of the fight.
Right. Yeah, that's how it feels.
Okay, coach, I got you. No problem.
Yeah, it feels like there became kind of more flashy Showtime shit and less, I think that you have to mix that with a little bit of that dog fight. You got to be willing to get in there and and grind it out. But
he got his fucking ass kicked by Dos Anjos, and I think that probably, that's a tough loss for anybody. So I think that probably made it harder for him to pull the trigger.
There was a little improvement with the Ferguson fight, even though he lost. Like I felt like, okay, this is what everybody wanted. A little more, like even in that loss, I would be interested in seeing another fight. But like you said, if he comes back like he did against Dos Anjos, then I don't care anymore.
How do you feel about the Cowboy Conor fight? Do you think? Well, is that really going to happen?
I've heard absolutely, and I've heard absolutely not.
I know Brendan Schaub's like, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
I've heard from my sources it's going to happen.
Well,
So
Brendan Schaub says a lot of things.
It's
He
true.
says a ton of things.
Yeah. How do you feel about that fight, though, Finn?
From like the perspective of what's going to happen in the octagon.
Yeah.
Or even just as a fan, like, is that something you would be interested in?
Yeah, I would totally like to see it. It's interesting because that's definitely a step down for Conor.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's always fought the best of the best. Whether he wins, well, actually, that's not true. Nate Diaz is not the best of the best, but
right.
By and large, he has challenged himself to fight like really top level guys that, a lot of people, including me, thought were maybe was like, man, he may have bit off more than he could chew, even with like Eddie Alvarez, and but he came out on top. Aldo, obviously. So Cerrone is like, I'm a huge Cerrone fan, but he's definitely a notch down from those guys. So that is interesting to me. I wonder if Conor will like be able to like get up for it mentally.
Yeah, I agree. And also a lot of what you said about Pettis, I started to feel that way about Cerrone too. Like his fight, the fight before, did he fight Elkins? Or no, I'm sorry, not Elkins. Who is the huge dude? He's kind of a newer guy. I'm completely blanking on his name. But I feel like
Cowboy's last fight.
What's that?
I didn't see Cowboy's last fight.
Oh, okay. Well, then so he fought Mike Perry. And
That's
for me, I was kind of on the same train as you with Pettis, where I just didn't feel like Cowboy really had the fire. And I know a lot of people were kind of commiserating about, well, he's doing too many other things. And I don't think fighting's really, it's not his thing. He's into, extreme sports and whatever.
Wakeboarding.
Yeah. And so I was a little worried that we were just going to kind of see this Cowboy kind of just deteriorate and eventually become unwatchable. And then he just came out with this fire against Mike Perry, who I believe was a little beneath Cowboy in the first place. I think that Cowboy definitely had the advantage, especially in experience. But he came out angry and hungry. And I think that Cowboy versus McGregor would be an incredibly interesting matchup. But any of the previous Cowboys, I'm a little less interested.
See, Cowboy actually has, I would say at 155, has a lot more stopping power than Conor does.
Yes, absolutely.
Just knocked out or submitted a lot of people. I don't know what the percentage is, but he has that. He can end a fight at any time in a lot of different ways. So I would give him the advantage over Conor, and I think he's probably the bigger guy. He's definitely taller.
No.
Yeah, well, he's got kicks that Conor needs to watch out for. I mean, not that Conor didn't need to watch out for kicks against Jose Aldo, but it's Cerrone just he has got in terms of striking, a very well-rounded game.
Yep, I would watch it. Well, guys, I should go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to keep the lady waiting too much longer. But thank you very much for having me. Let me know when this goes live, and I'll be sure to share it on my end. And definitely keep in touch. I will let you know if I head down to Portland anytime soon. I'm sure I will.
Yeah, we'll have you in the studio. It's more fun.
Come up here and say hi to Mr. Crummett for me.
I will do. Where can people find you, Finn?
They can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/thepunkrockmba, or they can find me on Instagram at finnmckenty, FINNMCKENTY, or they can find me at the Starbucks in Woodinville, Washington every morning.
There you go. I'm a Starbucks frequenter as well.
Me too.
I used to fight it as I was young. I was like, I don't want to support this corporation. And then I
support local businesses. I'm a local business guy. So Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks.
There you go. Yeah, man. That's hilarious. Well, thanks again, man. You're a busy guy. We appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Finn. That was a blast.
Talk to you soon.
See you, buddy. Bye.